So often, the question around diabetes and weight loss focuses on leaving behind aspects of your old self. But when we think in terms of negatives, which is the extra weight, the chronic disease, the elevated blood glucose, and the health risks that are associated with those conditions, the conversation can feel a bit exhausting. That's why we try to flip things around here. And we help you focus on the foods that you can eat to your heart's content and the lifestyle behaviors that you can implement that are going to have a significant positive impact on your overall well-being. We'll teach you how much better you'll feel, how much more energy you'll have, and the personal confidence that you know that you are in the driver's seat of your health. And that's why in today's episode, we're happy to have a very special guest who's made his life's work out of helping people become their ideal physical self today and stay that way in the long term. So I'll welcome today to our show, Maxime Sigouin. Maxime, did I get your last name right?
Yes, I'll say yes. Sigouin. You're right Sigouin.
There. Maxime Sigouin. Awesome.
French,
awesome.
The accent, that's hard.
I love it. So Maxime, you're a very accomplished entrepreneur, and you're a highly accomplished fitness coach. You're an entrepreneur, you're an athlete, and you're the founder of Fit Vegan Coaching, a company that's dedicated to helping individuals adopt a healthier lifestyle through both plant-based nutrition and exercise. And part of the reason why I'm so excited to have you on the show today is because there's a lot of people in the world of exercise, a lot of trainers, a lot of very talented trainers, but very few of them actually know anything about plant-based nutrition. And so when you start talking about food, the conversation often becomes a little bit more bro science-y, but not with you. And you have over 10 years of experience in the fitness industry. You've helped over 650 plant-based eaters, or vegans, if you will, successfully transition to a healthier way of living. And you're a very well-respected leader in the health and wellness community. And you yourself are a very accomplished athlete. So let's start at the top. Talk to us about your personal story. How did you turn into a plant-based eater in the first place?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. Very grateful to be here and I have a chance to chat with you guys. So my journey started almost over 9 years ago. I actually used to be a bodybuilder and a power lifter. So talking about bro science, I was living the bro science. I was eating, a dozen eggs for breakfast. I was eating 3 chicken breasts every 2 hours for 5 meals a day. I was a definition of a bro, right? I just like the energy, the training, I had the physique for it. So I ended up bulking up to 240 pounds, ended up stepping on stage, competing in bodybuilding and as a non-vegan. Then one day I was training with one of my buddies and he was my ride to go to the gym. And so on the way back home, he stopped at his friend's apartment and he's like, I just need to go and pick up something in there. So I went with him. We opened the door and there's a massive runway for like high fashion modeling. There's a runway. I'm like, what kind of friend do you have there? And he's like, oh, it's my modeling agent. I just need to come here to pick up my comm cards, which are kind of like your business cards when you're in the modeling world. I've never really thought of modeling as a thing. I never thought that people got paid to kind of be on magazines. So she saw me, I'm 240 pounds, looking like a bro, big chunky cheeks. She's like, I see something under those big chubby cheeks. Like, why don't you just try losing some weight and see where we can get you, see if we can do a photo shoot and get you some gigs. And at that point, I already done bodybuilding, I already done powerlifting. I was like, you know what, let me give this a shot. I was prepping for a modeling fitness show, getting out for it, did a photo shoot and then ended up like loving it, making some money. I was like, well, this is great. Let me just do more of this. I can get paid for people to take photos of me. I don't have to like go to work at Subway at the time where I was working. So I went on Google because they told me that I was still too big. I was still too muscular for the clothes because I'm 6'4". I needed to fit into like a medium, like a small medium, but I was an extra large. Right. So I went on Google and I was like, what diet's going to allow me to get skinny the fastest? And they're like, vegans. Vegans are skinny and weak. I was like, well, I don't care if I'm weak. I just need to be skinny. And so ultimately I went vegan the next day. I ditched my eggs and the chicken. I think the first thing I had was a bowl of dates, frozen blueberries, and bananas. That was over 9 years ago when I first transitioned. And so in my first year, ultimately ended up losing 80 pounds, stopped strength training, just ate vegan, very low amount of calorie because I didn't know how to fuel myself. And so ultimately ended up losing 80 pounds, getting some gigs and making some money in that industry. But that was the start of the whole vegan journey, ultimately.
Okay, so let's go backwards here. You said that when you first competed in a bodybuilding competition at the weight of 240, did you say that you had won that competition?
Despite I finished 4th out of 15. That was my first show ever.
Got it. So your first show ever, you finished 4th out of 15. And
Yeah.
that was still sort of an ego boost for you to say, okay, cool, sweet, I can do this. But in order for me to become even better, or maybe place at the top, then I'm going to have to change my diet and become a little bit more lean. Is that right?
Yeah. So, basically after bodybuilding, I did my first show. I hated it. It's such a demanding thing to go down to like 4% body fat. You're
Right.
just completely drained socially. It's really hard. And so I went the opposite direction after. I went into powerlifting. I was like, let me just become fat and strong. I was like, I don't want to have to diet. So ultimately, I
Oh, got it.
completely switched. I went on the whole diet, which you eat like a whole cake, a whole pizza, a whole pint of ice cream. You just want to be fat and strong. That's basically what's the goal. And
Okay.
that's when I met the agent, and she was like, "You got big chubby cheeks, but like I can see a jawline under there. Like try losing some weight."
Got it. So run me through a typical day of eating in your previous world. Were you literally eating pizza and ice cream in order to become fat? And or were those types of foods actually helping you become stronger? Because ultimately what you cared about, correct me if I'm wrong, is strength. You didn't necessarily want to become, fatter. You were looking for
Yeah.
strength. So talk to me about what your philosophy and what you were actually eating.
Yeah, for sure. So honestly, it was purely an escapism for the world of bodybuilding, because cutting for a bodybuilding show was so strict and restrictive. If there was blueberry on my plan and I was like, well, I really want to have strawberries, it was of the mindset of like strawberries are going to make you fat because that's not what's written on the plan. So I
Right.
developed a really unhealthy relationship with food as I went through that first show. And so when I was done, I had such an unhealthy relationship with food. I had problems with binge eating. And so to me, I justified it. I was like, what's the thing that I can train for where I don't need to be lean and I can justify not being this lean? I was like, you know what? Power lifters, they're fat and strong. I was like, I don't need to diet for that. So my issue with like binge eating and bad relationship with food was hidden under this new goal. So that's kind of like how I
Got it.
covered it. I was like, yeah, let me just eat whatever I want and get really strong ultimately.
Perfect. Okay. So run me through a typical 24 hours of eating. What did
Yeah.
you eat?
So when I was bodybuilding, it was like the chicken and the dozen eggs for breakfast, kind of what I just shared.
Sure.
For powerlifting, man, it was like, again, not vegan. I would eat a whole pack of bacon, a whole thing of eggs. For lunch, I'd maybe eat like 2 Subway sandwiches, but 12 inches, so 24 inches of like Subway sandwiches. I'd probably go for like 1,000 calorie smoothie. And then for dinner, I would have like some shawarma, some pizza, or some cookies with it. I would just like consume as much as I could, because I was like, I don't have this healthy relationship with food. Let me just eat whatever I want
Mhm.
and then justifiably be fat because I want to be strong.
Was there ever a voice in the back of your head that said, this is not the right thing to do? You're increasing your chronic disease risk. You're actually moving in the wrong direction, or not?
Not at that point, because at that point, I haven't had anyone in my family that was sick.
Mhm.
When that happened, I was probably like 17 years old, right? So I was still in the stage of like, I'm invincible. I don't
Invincible.
like,
Yeah.
you don't think of these things yet. And so when I did that period and I transitioned, at that time, my grandfather got diagnosed with cancer. And that's kind of when all the connections started to happen in my head. But at that point, I was like, I'm 17, I'm invincible, can eat whatever I want, lift whatever I want.
And how old were you when you met this agent that tried to sort of educate you about becoming a little bit leaner?
Yeah. So I was, I think it was around my 20s,
Around your
around my
20s.
20s, yeah, early
Okay.
20s.
So talk to me about your grandfather getting diagnosed with cancer. And I know that you also had an ex-partner who was diagnosed with breast cancer. So that seems like cancer is
Yeah.
sort of a reoccurring theme in your life. Talk to me about, either or both of those individuals and what type of an impact it had on you.
Yeah, for sure. So when I transitioned to veganism to be able to get skinny for modeling, then one of the first documentaries I watched was Forks Over Knife. And then as I was watching that, like within a matter of a week, that's when my grandfather got diagnosed with cancer, right? He had a problem with heart issues. And I think he passed away at like 63. He was really young. And so as I watched the documentary and they talked about the correlation between meat consumption, dairy consumption, and chronic disease, I was like, man, that's kind of like what's happening to my grandfather. My grandfather's not the healthiest person ever, right? When I went to his house, what he showed us was you have a toast with melted butter and Nutella on top. And like that was breakfast, right? That's kind of what
Tasty.
he taught us to. All right. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's a lot of sugar, a lot of fat. So that's what he taught us. And I started to make that connection between the two of them. And then unfortunately, my grandfather passed away, like I think like a week after he got diagnosed. Like it wasn't too long after he got diagnosed that he passed away. And to me, that really made the switch in my head, right? And then I think everyone has that initial phase when they transition to eating vegan, like that little savior mode of like, you go to your parents, to your friends, and you're just really intense about it, trying to convert everyone because you're trying to save them. Kind of went through that little phase with everyone, my friends and my family. And then, yeah, for my ex-partner, yeah, fast forward like several years. I think I met her almost 7 years ago. All right. So maybe like 2 years after my grandfather passed away. We started dating. Within 3 months of us dating, she gets diagnosed with breast cancer. And she was like vegetarian before. And then when she got diagnosed, she went whole food plant-based 100%. Inflammatory markers went down, like tumors started shrinking down. And then ultimately, doctor told her she would have a year to live. She ended up making 5 years with a pretty good quality of life for those 5 years. So there's a significant difference in her health. And I think, again, added an extra 4 years to her life before she ended up passing away ultimately.
Wow. And was there any indication as to why she developed breast cancer in the first place? Like, was this did it have some hereditary association with other family members, or was it literally due to her lifestyle leading up to that point?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely due to lifestyle. We did a test. There was nothing genetic in her body that would have put her in a position to get breast cancer. She was an entrepreneur, not sleeping a lot, living on like energy bars and coffee and energy drink for a long time, trying to build her business, and ultimately just put her health at risk. And so kind of same thing with my grandfather. Was lifestyle created. There was no genetic predisposition for my grandfather to get cancer as well. So for both of them, that's kind of what put me on this path, is like, if you eat whole food plant-based and you're active and you take care of yourself, you're greatly reducing your risk of all these diseases. So both of them, it was lifestyle.
Okay. So this is actually really important, because oftentimes we ask people like, what's your why? What's one of the first questions we ask people when they come into our coaching program? And the reason for that is because we want people to really understand at a deep emotional and spiritual level, what is the driver for your lifestyle change, right? Yeah. And we ask people some pretty, deep questions about like, are you trying to run away from something, or are you trying to run towards something? And I want you to get to a point where when you tell me what your why is, that it brings tears to your eyes, because it has to be that deeply rooted in your emotional state in order for it to actually stick in the long term, right? If you had to state what your why was in transitioning to a plant-based diet, what would that why be?
It is definitely what happened with my ex-partner, is I don't want anyone to have to go through that. Now, ultimately, we've all had family members that kind of been sick, and we see them from time to time. But for me to have been the caregiver 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 5 years straight, I saw what was on the other side of once you lose your health, waking up in the middle of the night to scream, having to rush to the hospital, all the treatments you got to fund and go to every single day, all the things you got to watch out for. And seeing her in that state and seeing how genuinely nothing else mattered. The money, the car, the house, the trips, all of it was completely worthless compared to just getting this one thing back. And seeing what was on the flip side of that, I was like, man, there's nothing that's worth this, right? There's no type of food, there's no trip, there's no thing that you think that's so important that can compensate for losing your health. And so to me, I don't want people to have to go through that, because I saw it, I say secondhand because I'm not the one that went through it, but I saw what it was like to lose your health. And I want no one to have to go through that, because it's completely unnecessary and it's really painful.
Yeah, that does not sound like a fun thing to do. And I admire you for going through that whole process and being her caregiver the entire time. So walk me through the next part of the story, right? You decided that you were sort of like shook emotionally from watching your ex-partner and your grandfather both get diagnosed with different forms of cancer. You started to make this transition to a vegan lifestyle. And you also are a power lifter that was previously eating ice cream and chicken and unhealthily on purpose as an escape. What happened to you? What happened to your body composition? What happened to your body weight? What happened to your athletic abilities? Talk to me through this process. Like what happened in the first year of making a transition yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned I lost 80 pounds in the first year, but the whole purpose was for me to lose all the muscle that I had built through bodybuilding and powerlifting, because I couldn't fit in the clothes that I needed to fit in to get modeling gigs. So for me, it was just simply about losing muscle mass. So again, I just barely ate any protein, ate severely low on my calories. I stopped training. All I did was running, managed to drop 80 pounds. So I got skinny. My body composition was terrible. I looked soft. I was skinny and soft. So I basically went from jacked and muscular to skinny fat on purpose so I can fit in the clothes. But I didn't know how to fuel myself as a vegan to get great body composition at the time.
So how did you figure that out then? What did you have to change in order to actually understand what to eat and how much to eat in order to have to not be skinny fat and have an actual muscular, lean body composition?
Yeah, it took me years, and I'll tell you, when I got to the point of realizing why, I was like, that's so dumb. I could have figured that out way before. But going into the vegan space, I was like, well, let me just go on YouTube and see if I can find some resources. And those were the days of like Freely the Banana Girl, Durian Ryder, Rocker
Right.
Stino, like all those people, which was like Raw Till 4, Raw Vegan, that whole movement. And so I just like, I did Banana Island, I did Raw Till 4, I just like did all the things that were there. It's like, let me just educate myself and try all of it.
Sure.
And I got to tell you, raw vegan during winter in Quebec, Canada sucked. Like when it's minus 40 outside and you're eating raw food, this shit's cold.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, man. I used to be a raw foodie for 14 years, and I lived in San Francisco, which is nothing like Quebec, but it's cold and it's not that fun. But go ahead.
Yeah, just your bones are freezing. So I tried all of these things, and eventually, like I got into Ironman around the time where my partner kind of got sick. Because to me, like my dad made a really big push when I was younger, like alcohol or drugs are like a big no-no. And to me, going through such a stressful thing of being a caregiver to someone who had cancer. Again, man, I was a hippie. There's so much to my story. I was a hippie traveling, hitchhiking around, sleeping in tents, just living my life, traveling the world without any money. And then I never paid rent. I never had to take care of anyone. I meet my ex-partner. She gets diagnosed with cancer. We get an apartment. Now I have bills to pay, I have someone to take care of, and their life's on the line. It was such a drastic shift that I had such a hard time adapting to that new stressor. I was like, I need an out. And fitness was always that thing for me. So I got into triathlon training, got into Ironman training ultimately. So when I got into that, that's when I started making the connection. Like, hey, I'm doing all this training. Like, how can I properly fuel myself? And it was just one day I was just meditating. And I was like, well, people that have the best body composition in the world are bodybuilders, right? And people that have the most endurance would say like are Ironmans. So I'm like, how can I grab both these worlds while also including the disease proofing aspect? Well, I'm like, whole food plant-based is a disease proofing aspect, right? Like if we do this and focus on variety, like a lot of it is taken care of. On the Ironman side, I was like, okay, there's specific types of endurance training and zone training that you need to do. I'm like, how do I have great body composition? Well, the best in the world are bodybuilders. So what's the thing that they do different, right? Strength training is a bigger emphasis and protein is a bigger emphasis. But into me as a vegan, to follow the old rule that I had, which is about like two grams per pound of body weight.
2 grams per pound?
When I was 240, that's 480 grams of protein. I was like, no way I'm gonna get that as a vegan, right?
2 grams per pound, that's 4 grams per kilogram. I've never even heard of protein intake that high. That's crazy.
This is the Arnold shit in the Quebec days, right? Like there's the bro science. I was like, it's so much protein. I was like, there's no way I can eat this much protein, first of all, for it to be healthy and as a vegan. So I started doing some more research and you kind of started stumble about like the 0.8 gram per kg of body weight.
Correct.
So I started following that and then saw a bit of a difference in my lean muscle mass. And I kind of started increasing it some more. And I can't remember the study, but there was one says for athletes, you need a little bit more protein. It was about the 1.2, I think the 1.6 to 2 gram per kg of body weight, right? Then kind of fell into that range. And I was like, oh shit, body composition is shifting. Like I'm building muscle, I'm getting leaner. This is working. And then as I progressed, I was like, all right, this is the range, right? Anything below that was like, you can be healthy, have an amazing life, disease proof your body and just be a healthy individual. But if the goal is body composition shift, I was like, let's just grab from the best people in the world that are good at what they do. And then look at the new science on it, because obviously 2 grams per pound of body weight didn't really make sense. And look at the new science and kind of brought me within that range. And I was like, oh, this is what needs to happen ultimately. So I kind of stayed within that protein range and I was able to like massively shift my body composition.
You know, I was just listening to a podcast by a gentleman named Dr. Christopher Gardner, who's a professor at Stanford University. He's considered one of the sort of world-respected authorities on many things related to nutrition. And he was doing a podcast specifically about protein intake. And a lot of the things that he was bringing to the table, I would say were not necessarily like brand new, but he was helping to solidify a lot of these classical arguments with modern research. And one of the things he brought to the table is that for the average individual who's not necessarily trying to, not a competitive athlete, 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight meets your RDA, or is your sort of what they refer to as the EAR, which is the estimated average requirement of protein intake. So 0.8 basically at the very low. And they said that if you go north of 1.6 grams per kilogram total body weight, at that point, anything excess of 1.6 grams, according to the research, is just pure, is waste. Meaning that it's excess protein and your body is basically going to take that and it's going to convert it into metabolites that can go into the TCA cycle and then be converted into carbohydrate or fat. Right.
Yeah.
So 1.6 is now being considered the upper level of what is considered, reasonable protein intake, which is exactly in line with what you were saying, because 0.8 is the bottom, 1.6 is the top. And so anywhere within that range can be considered, totally effective in helping to change your body composition and get you to a point where you have sort of optimal, strength and fitness capabilities as well.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you saying that, because that's a lot of people get that confused. Like whenever I don't say 0.8 gram, people think that's a bad thing. Like, you're gonna be healthy. Like, it's everything that you need. It's just, it depends what you're training for, what's the outcome that you want.
Correct.
Right. And 1.6 gram per kg of body weight, very easy to hit on a plant-based diet, especially on a whole food plant-based diet, right? So I see a lot of coaches out there that are like, you need whatever, one gram per pound of body weight as a vegan, and then they have to consume a lot of fake meat to try to hit that. I was like, well, you don't have to. You shouldn't eat these things necessarily, because they're brand new. We're going to know the impact of these foods in like 10, 15 years when the new studies came out. Like, genuinely, we don't know the impact of those foods on the body. Correct. And you can do it on a whole food plant-based diet, which has been around for the longest time, right?
Yeah, we got plenty of information about that. So if you go backwards, then you used to be 240 pounds. You dropped 80 pounds in the first year to get from 240 down to 160 pounds. Is that how much you currently weigh right now?
No, I'm 200 pounds right now.
You're 200 pounds. Okay. So you went from 240 down to 160. Then from 160, you inched your way back up to 200. And you said earlier, you are 6'4", correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So 6'4", ideal body weight. I have to do the calculation, but let's say that it's somewhere around 200 pounds, which seems totally reasonable to me. Walk me through a day of eating now, and we can contrast that against what you used to eat as a power lifter.
Yeah, for sure. It's a big difference. So I'll have like a really big green antioxidant rich smoothie in the morning. So I'll throw some some unsweet nut milk in there. I'll throw some frozen spinach, some kale, some chard. I'll have a little bit of like hemp protein powder in there. I'll have some chia seeds, some flax seeds, some frozen mixed berries. I'll have some bananas in there. That's typically kind of like, that's what I had this morning before we jumped on this podcast. I just went for a bike ride. So I like a big smoothie. Typically I'll range up to like 1,000 calories with the whole thing. Like, I make it dense to try to hit all the food that I need to eat. And then for lunch right now, it's like a full block of tempeh, just a ton of mixed vegetables. Whatever I go to a grocery store, I'm like, let's just grab all of these things and put them in a stir fry. And I had that into my lunch, and then some sweet potatoes, basically some yams with a dish. Again, just averaging about 1,000 calories for that same thing there as well. And then for dinner, what I have, because I did some meal prep, it's a mix of chickpeas, kidney beans, black beans that I kind of like roasted with some onion and some bell peppers, green, yellow, and red. And then I'll have some like basmati rice with it, and then just a ton more of like stir fry vegetable on the side. That's kind of where I add my varieties with the stir fry vegetables. And then that's going to be about 1,000 calories as well. So it's going to be about 3,000 calories for the day, which is approximately where I'm at right now. And it's way more food than I can handle right now, but we're training for something specific. And that brings me where my protein needs to be ultimately.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Are you currently weight stable right now, or are you gaining or losing?
We're doing a cut right now, because I've been bulking for a year straight. So now we're going the opposite direction. Okay.
So you're actively losing weight. And what's your new target body weight?
About 190 pounds, 10% body fat is the goal.
190 with 10% body fat. Okay. So you basically are trying to lose about 10 pounds. And if you are losing weight right now, that means that the 3,000 of calories that you're consuming on average per day is less than the total amount of your total energy expenditure. So you're actually burning more than 3,000 calories per day, creating an energy deficit. So you're in negative calorie balance. And as a result of that, you're going to be losing weight.
I'm about like 200-300 calorie deficit right now. I don't like to do big drops, because you sacrifice so much lean muscle when you do that.
Okay. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was my next question. Okay. You know this better than most people would. When we run a weight loss coaching program, and what the weight loss industry has sort of brainwashed a lot of people into believing is that, number one, if you're trying to lose weight, faster is better, right? You see it all over the magazines in the checkout stand at the grocery store. And it'll say something like, lose 30 pounds in the next 21 days, fit into that beach body, and I look at this stuff and I'm just like, stop. Why are you guys saying this? This is so dumb. It is so dumb, because it is so harmful, right? So it brainwashes people into thinking that quicker is better.
Yeah.
And so when they think quicker is better, then in order to execute a large weight loss in a short period of time, let's say 30 pounds in the first month, 30 pounds in the first 30 days, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have to create a pretty darn massive calorie deficit on a daily basis in order to achieve that. Right.
Yeah.
And if you're going to create a large calorie deficit on a daily basis, something like 500, 600, 800 calories per day, then what it ends up doing is it creates a lot of like psychological stress, and people are like, oh my God, I'm so hungry all the time, and I have to eat these tiny portion controlled meals, and it doesn't feel right. And why am I starving? And I see the numbers on the scale, which is good, but my God, I am hungry. Right. And you also said that if you create a large energy deficit, and there's another negative side effect, and I'm just blanking on what it was. What did you just say?
When you do a large calorie deficit, you're just sacrificing a lot of lean muscle mass when you're doing that.
Bingo.
Right.
So talk to us a little bit more about that, because the goal is not to necessarily sacrifice lean body mass. The goal is to sacrifice fat mass. So why does a smaller calorie deficit help?
Yeah. And I'll go a little bit on a tangent right now. So
do it.
A few things. The body is a survival machine and an adaptation machine. Like if you narrow it down to its two basics, your body is there to adapt to life and it's there to survive. So understanding that, right? So let's just say, Cyrus, we grab you, you're expending all this energy and we drastically cut your calorie. Your body doesn't go like, hey, Cyrus trying to get lean for the summer. It goes like, oh shit, we're in a desert. We haven't found as much food as we need to right now. Right. So we need to get rid of things that are unnecessary, right? You can be really skinny with not a lot of muscle mass and live a very long time. And muscle mass, it costs a lot of calories in terms of the food that you're consuming to maintain it, right? So if you're in a boat and it's sinking, what's the first thing you throw off? The heaviest things, right? It'll keep you afloat. So what's the thing that costs the most amount of energy in your body to maintain it? Lean muscle mass. So if you do a rapid calorie deficit, your body goes like, oh shit, we're expending this much. We're only taking this much. If we continue on this trend, we die 10 years early. We don't want that. Let's get rid of things that are unnecessary. So your body will start to let go of lean muscle mass. And so what happens to your shift in body composition, like shift in body composition is not really complex. You have two variables. You have fat, you have muscle. The goal is to increase muscle, decrease fat, right? When you do it properly, that's what's supposed to happen. What most people do by doing a rapid calorie deficit, they decrease the fat, but the muscle. So they just end up looking like a skinnier, lighter, fluffier version of themselves, right? They're lighter on the scale, but they look the same because they haven't accomplished a shift in body composition. So the faster you go, the more muscle you lose, the worse you look.
So well said. I'm not even going to try and recap that. That was brilliant. Let me ask you this. People always are told diet and exercise, diet and exercise, diet and exercise. There's two sort of like vague terms that don't really mean anything. But what people will do is that they'll interpret that and they'll go, okay, cool, sweet. That means I gotta go on a diet and I gotta create a large calorie deficit. And then I gotta go to the gym more. So they'll go to the gym and they'll get on a treadmill, or they'll get on a elliptical, or they'll try and lift some weights, thinking that by being active, they're actually going to preserve their existing muscle mass and or maybe even gain muscle mass. Is that true? If they just go to the gym, will it help in, actually preserving muscle mass or gaining muscle mass, despite the fact that they have a large calorie deficit, or not?
False. It's absolutely false.
Talk to us why.
I can't tell you how many people are eating whole food plant-based or being physically active. They're doing yoga, they're hiking, they're running, and they're looking skinny and soft, right? And I say this in a respectful way, of course, but they're working so hard, but just the shift that they're wanting is not happening. So when it comes to shifting your body composition, again, that variable of building muscle, what's the thing that's going to build muscle? The thing that's going to put the most amount of stress on the muscle tissue, right? Running will very little on the legs, not on the upper body, not on your glutes and your hamstring, the way that you're doing a squat, for example, would put. So we need to put enough stressor on the muscle for it to tear and repair. If it's not enough stressor on the muscle, again, your body's an adaptation machine. Why does it need to get fitter? Because it's already used to dealing with your current environment, right? If I grab you, Cyrus, and have you ever done an Ironman before?
No, and I hope to never do an Ironman, but go ahead.
Okay, well, for the sake of this example, let's just say you want to, right?
Sure.
If I have enough time, I can train you to do an Ironman and crush it. But the reason is because with time comes enough time to adapt to the new stressor and eventually adjust to the new stressor and become fitter and fitter and fitter, right? Yeah. By simply adaptation. So same thing when you're in the gym, you want to be strength training so you can put that stress on the muscle so it has a reason to become stronger and bigger to therefore shift your body composition, right? Those two variables of fat and muscle. The other component, we work with people that are like 40 to I think our oldest member is 81 years old. Bone density decreases as you get older, right? Yep. So bone bearing activity is really important. Strength training is one of the best ways to do that. So if you're in the gym, you're just doing cardio, you're doing yourself a disservice. You want to throw in some strength training in there, resistance training. Your body doesn't care if it's a dumbbell, kettlebell, barbell, an IKEA bag with books in it. It just wants resistance, right? So if you're going to the gym and not doing these things, then you're doing yourself a disservice. You can still do the cardio and the hike, which is great. I understand from a mental health standpoint, I understand from a heart standpoint, it's important. But if you want to be able to shift your body composition, or even if you don't care about shift body composition and you want to feel healthier and stronger and more in control of your body, strength training is the thing that's going to give you that.
Okay. So walk me through this process. You asked me earlier, have you ever done an Ironman? And my answer was no, and I never want to do an Ironman. I'll tell you the reason why I made that statement is because I used to do endurance training. So back in, if we rewind the clock back to like 2000 and I want to say 2003, 2004, I had first switched over to eating a plant-based diet, and I was so excited. I had so much energy that I was like, I got to do something. So I went and I bought a road bike, and then I joined a group of fellow cyclists, and we ended up training for an event that happens in California in the middle of July. That's called the Death Ride. And the Death Ride, I was attracted by the name, and I was like, oh, this sounds awesome. What is the Death Ride? And it turns out that you're basically riding 130 miles and you're gaining 16,000 feet of elevation by climbing 5 different peaks within one day. And it's supposed to be considered, half of Mount Everest in one day. And it's hard. And, most of the people that try the Death Ride don't even succeed. And I was like, cool, that sounds ridiculously hard. Can't wait. Let's do it. So I trained for 6 months to get to a point where I could do this thing. And I ended up doing it on the day of, and I ended up actually getting through it. And I felt great because it was a great sense of accomplishment. But so I loved the training. I loved going through the process. I learned so much and I enjoyed it. But the one problem that I would say is that I was getting skinnier and my total body weight decreased and my muscle mass decreased, such that when I went to the gym, I just didn't have as much strength and power. Right. Yeah. So walk me through this process. If you told me, hey, Cyrus, you're doing an Ironman with me and we're going to be doing exactly a year from today, right? Yeah. How would I have to train in order to be able to do the Ironman, but yet not sacrifice my lean body mass?
Yeah, of course. So something would have to give ultimately, right? So your body will adjust to whatever training style you're doing ultimately. So a big part of it, if we want to retain, so the goal would not to be build lean muscle mass, because it would be pretty challenging for you to do that through it. It'd be to retain as much lean muscle mass as possible because you're going to be expending so much energy. So obviously the protein requirement would have to be there, kind of like we talked about earlier. Your energy intake of food would have to be a lot higher because you're burning a lot more. Because if you're burning a lot more, not consuming enough, then you just by default putting yourself in a deep calorie deficit, which by default you're going to lose muscle mass because it's harder to sustain it. So ultimately, man, if you're a level 10, let's just say for your start of your training and endurance training, and we need you to be at a level 100 to be able to do the race, well, all I got to do is just get your body adjusted to level 11. Once it got used to it, let's bump to 12, let's bump to 13, let's bump to 14, and build up for you to be able to do level 100. Because if we grab you on race day and I make you do that same ride on day one that you started, you wouldn't have finished it. Right? You would have bunked, you would have cramped, you want to be able to finish it. So just your body adjusted. So what you did with your training is just slowly increase progressive overload of stress over time. And then you got there. So if you want to retain as much lean muscle mass as possible, I would do 3 strength training sessions minimum a week on top of your other training. Make sure your protein is there. Make sure you're consuming enough calories on top of it. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing, when people tell me that they want to do endurance races, I tell them they will take over your life. I was training like 15, 20 hours a week when I was competing. It's a part-time job. That's just the training. That's not the recovery. That's not the nutrition. That's not the sleeping. And so it's about analyzing, like, again, what we talked about earlier, why do you want to do it? Because other areas of your life will suffer if you're trying to take this on. And so to me, I don't compete anymore. I just bike for fun because I'm on a bigger mission and I have nothing to fulfill or gain out of doing another race. So it just depends why people want to do it ultimately.
So you were saying basically 3 sessions of strength training in addition to the endurance training that's actually going to help me improve my cardiovascular endurance.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's great because I love both of those types of trainings. And I think what I wasn't doing at the time is I wasn't putting in a significant effort to strength training. And therefore that was sacrificing my lean body mass. So
you need enough of that stressor on a repeated basis to be able to stimulate the growth, right? If you do it like once a week and your next stressor is in a week from now with that type of stressor, it's not enough for the body to be like, oh, I need to adjust to this stress. It needs to be repeated enough. Your body's like, oh, I really need to adjust to this thing.
Right. Of course. Of course. Hey, thanks for tuning in. My name is Cyrus Khambatta, and I'm the co-author of the New York Times best-selling book, Mastering Diabetes. Now, I struggled with diabetes for years following conventional medical treatment, and my health deteriorated before my eyes very quickly. I then decided to take my health into my own hands and do a deep dive into the scientific research. And after years of learning the nitty-gritty details of insulin resistance and experimenting with my own lifestyle and helping other people reverse insulin resistance, I then co-created the life-changing Mastering Diabetes method with Robbie Barbero. And that has helped thousands of people master diabetes once and for all. Now, if you want to learn those secrets, well, they're right here in this book. And you can get your copy if you visit masteringdiabetes.org/book or click the link in the description. Now, this book has more than 3,000 reviews and has changed the lives of more than 100,000 people living all around the world. And it's designed to be your gateway to living a lifestyle that's guaranteed to reverse that annoying condition called insulin resistance that lurks behind the scenes and makes your blood glucose hard to control. And whether you're living with type 1, type 1.5, pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, or gestational diabetes, this book has a wealth of knowledge and more than 800 scientific references inside. Now, trust me when I say, this book is designed to be a game changer for your health. So head on over to Amazon and pick a copy today. If you're ready to be the next success story, then visit masteringdiabetes.org/book or click the link in the description, pick up your copy today, and let us know what you think. So for somebody who's trying to lose weight, let's say I weigh in at 200 pounds today, and I know that my ideal body weight is 170. So I'm basically trying to target 30 pounds of weight loss. During that weight loss process, to go back to what you're saying, we're trying to reduce adiposity, decrease fat mass.
Yeah.
But, in an ideal world, we would decrease fat mass and also simultaneously increase muscle mass.
Yeah.
But that can be challenging for people, or maybe there's just a way to do it that actually is effective. So walk me through that process. If my goal was not to do an Ironman, but instead just lose 30 pounds, what would be a realistic regimen for me to be performing on a weekly basis, both exercise wise and then dietary wise? What would you suggest for that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I would for sure ask more questions as to like, what's the reason? What do you want to look like? How do you want to feel when you're at the end of it? And just identify like, managing the expectation is huge. You coach people as well. If someone comes in and they're like 30 pounds in 30 days, and then they only lose 30 pounds in 30 days, they log off and then they fall off. They never come back. Right. So managing the expectation. So if you want to tell me you want to lose 30 pounds, my rule is about 20 pounds per 4 months. So 30 pounds is 6 months you want to lose. Right. Because I tell people we can go faster, but I need perfection from you to do this, which is not realistic. Right.
Perfect.
Because we have all the best intentions when we start. But man, I had someone, their house, their kitchen got struck by lightning. So like they couldn't meal prep. Like you can't plan for this stuff, right? So you got to account for like kind of life happening. So wiggle room. Let's say like, hey, Cyrus, we're gonna take 6 months to do this just for the fat loss phase. That's not the reverse dieting. That's not anything else after. That's just the fat loss phase. So if I were to do this, you can just grab any online calculator that will identify your maintenance calorie, right? Just to get started. Do like a 200 calorie deficit off of that. Not a huge, just a 200 calorie deficit.
200. Okay.
Right? Minimum strength training would be 3 times a week. I would have a conversation with you and be like, hey, what does your schedule look like? Are you running 2 companies and have 3 kids? Are you single, have no kids? Right? So some people can strength train 3, some people can do 4. I don't really like to go too much to 5 because then you're approaching like training like an athlete, which none of the people that I coach get paid to be fit, right? They have other jobs and other obligations. Sure. So I like to be between like 3 and 5, more 3 to 4 for the strength training component. And then we're going to throw in some cardiovascular exercise because at the end of the day, you can have the biggest biceps and the flattest stomach. If your heart gives out, you're still dead, right? So we need to train your heart. So we'll throw in at least like 1 to get started. If they're new to fitness or a bit more advanced, then we can kind of keep what they have already as a base. We'll do 1 to 2 weeks on the strength training session, the cardio with the nutrition of a 200 calorie deficit with the protein that we talked about of all whole food plant based. We'll do 1 to 2 weeks. After that 1 to 2 weeks, we'll have a baseline. Did you gain weight? Did you maintain your weight? Did you lose weight?
Got it.
Because for me to make the guess of like, this is exactly where your body is at, that can't happen, right? I would have to like be God to be able to figure that out. So let's just get data from your body, figure out how your body is going to respond. If you stay stable, well, that means that your metabolism was potentially a little bit of a slower place. So let's just create another 100 calorie deficit, see if you can lose some weight from there. I don't like to cut food or add exercise if we don't have to. I want to keep food as high as possible. And again, because it's whole food plant-based, there's just so much volume to it. But I want to keep food as high as possible and exercise as minimal as possible, right? Because at the end of the day, if I tell you, hey, man, I'm going to drop 30 pounds, you got to train 10 hours a week and eat 1,500 calories, you'll lose weight because any bad coach, and I put it, any bad coach can starve you and make you overexercise, you're going to lose weight. Like, that's not a really hard equation to figure out.
Right.
But
Exactly.
is the approach that you're using sustainable? So what that means is, if how you're eating and training to lose the weight, if you don't see yourself maintaining that after, not sustainable, right? Because
Absolutely.
that means that at one point your brain's going to go like, yes, I'm done, party, and you're going to eat shit that you're not supposed to eat, right?
Totally.
So,
Yeah. And then people, it kind of reinforces this idea of like, when's my cheat day? Can I cheat on Saturday? Can I cheat on Sunday? And I'm like, if you're asking me for your cheat day, that means that you don't enjoy what you're actually doing. We got a problem. Right.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So just nice, slow and steady, get feedback from the body. Hey, your body's there. Let's just move to this. We had someone that dropped 30 pounds with a 300 calorie deficit, but we created a 300 calorie deficit over the course of 6 months, right?
300 calorie deficit over the course of 6 months translated to 30 pounds of weight loss.
Yeah. So what happens, because every decrease you do, your body will try to adapt as fast as possible to it. Because again, you're in the middle of the desert, you have access to a certain amount of food. If you have access to less, your body wants to be able to optimize the amount of calories you have in to live as long as possible. So if I create you a 1,000 calorie deficit, your body will adjust really fast to it, and eventually you'll stop losing. If I give you a 50 calorie deficit and I remove 50, well, your body will take as much time to adjust to it. So we can lose a lot. We can lose weight with 50 calories by playing with your training, your exercise, and your nutrition.
Absolutely. Okay. This is fantastic. So I think one of the takeaways here, which is exactly what we also promote as well, is set some realistic expectations and don't try and do this overnight. Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the weight loss industry has messed with so many people's heads, making you think that faster is better. You not only can you lose a large amount of weight in a short time, but you should lose a large amount of weight in a short period of time. And it's really just like a frustrating narrative, because what ends up happening is that even if you are successful at that, I guarantee you that whatever lifestyle you're following that's getting you to lose 30 pounds in a short period of time or a lot of weight in a short period of time is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't care if you're following Weight Watchers or MetaFast or a ketogenic, like a very low carbohydrate diet, like a ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet, or if you're just calorie restricting. Regardless, any one of those approaches, done to a high degree in a short period of time is going to make you feel exhausted, like that picture you just saw on the screen there.
Yeah.
Let's talk one more thing about strength training here.
Yeah.
Something that you can take with you into your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, because there's a sort of common narrative that like strength training is what you do when you're in your 20s and 30s, but like you get to a point where you're going to end up with a lower back injury, or your shoulder's going to hurt, or like it's going to be too much strain on you, and it's going to be too challenging, and maybe it's even too risky for you when you're in your 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
True, false, not true, not false? What's the deal?
False. So like we talked about earlier, your body is purely an adaptation machine that will adapt to your environment. So if you don't put those additional stressors on your body will just try to stay neutral in homeostasis, or just trying to get comfortable, right? So as you're getting older, if you stop strength training, you stop trying to work on your mobility and on your strength, well, your body is not going to go, because you worked out in your 20s, you were this strong, your body's not going to keep this strength all the way in. Because if you don't stimulate the muscle, why does it need to stay there? Why does it need to stay as strong? And we've all been there. Like, I know you work out. So if you work out and you take like 2 weeks off because you're sick or something, and you come back, you're like, oh my God, it's sore, weight's heavier. You don't feel as coordinated as when you first left off for the gym.
Agreed.
The body loses it really rapidly. So when you're getting older and you stop kind of putting that good stressor on your body, then that's when all those injuries start to come, right? People are like, I hurt my back because I was like exercising. Like, you haven't exercised for a long time and you came back and you probably hurt your back. That's probably what happened, right? And at the time, as you get older, you also have to realize that it's not necessarily about the weight. It's about the form and the tension on the muscle. So typically when we train people that are, in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, we'll get them to spend a bit more time under tension. Because when you're younger, it's like, I'm just going to bench press this. And you kind of find your body finds this weird way to kind of like put the weight up sometimes. And you focus more on the weight. But as you get older, focus on more time under tension, that we can grab a lighter weight, less risk of injury. We can work on your mobility and all that. But strength training is one of the only, we'll use resistance training, because some people don't like weights. You can do body weights. You can do resistance band. Like I said, you could curl cans of beans for all that matter. Just your body knows gravity, right? Whatever is going to go against gravity that you have to exert an effort to move, that's resistance training. That's one of the top things in order to, again, strengthen your bone. So because there's this process called osteoblast and osteoclast, right? Blast is like just adding an extra layer of cement over it, and class is just kind of like smoothing it out. So that's how you strengthen your bone, by putting that pressure on it. And cardio simply doesn't do that, right? Like
Correct.
hiking, running, to a certain extent, it's very minimal stress on the bone, right? And then to target muscle growth specifically to keep that strength, well, you need to be able to kind of isolate or work on that muscle directly, which you can't simulate a bench press or a push-up, for example, by just going for a hike or for running or for biking or things like that.
Okay, so one of the things that I could use more clarification here for our audience is time under tension.
Yeah.
I know what it is, but explain, what does it mean the way that you described it? How does somebody increase their time under tension? What are they going to do?
Yeah, sure. So time under tension is simply exactly what it is, spending more time under tension. So in terms of repetition, you can consider spending 3 seconds down on a movement. So let's just say you're doing a squat, going down. Oh, there's a camera. Going down for 3 seconds. Slight pause, 0.5 second, 1 second, and then we're going back up for 3 seconds. Right. Same thing. You're doing a bench press or push ups. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So by doing that, you don't need as much of a heavy weight to be able to get a good load on the muscle, right? And when that happens, there's a few things. Again, your body, when you exercise, will find a path of least resistance. We've all done a squat where we're tired and it's heavy, and you kind of come down, and when you go back up, your knees kind of like buckle in inside to kind of go like this, and you're trying to get yourself back up. Again, body's trying to find a path of least resistance. The body's a survival machine. It doesn't think like, hey, Cyrus is trying to squat to build his legs up. It's like, oh, a tree fell on my back. I need to get it off of me. So it'll do what it needs to do to get that weight back up. So if I get you to go down for 3 seconds, pause for 1 second, go back up, and I give you one cue to push your knees on the outside as you're squatting, you're activating your hamstring and your glutes a lot more. And because you're spending so much, you're going so slow, you can't cheat your way up, right? You can't kind of like trying to compensate with your lower back or kind of do a weird movement to get the weight back up. So it forces you to not cheat with other muscles when you're going slower with the movement.
Got it. Okay. Makes perfect sense. So another way to think about time under tension is basically to slow down the movements, which you slow down movements and try to resist using momentum during those movements. Because when you use momentum, you end up like, as if you're doing a bicep curl, as an example, you can swing your back, you can swing your arm, and you can basically
like bring up your shoulder like this. And
yeah, right. So you want to like slow down the movements, which causes you to isolate muscle groups a little bit more. And then that puts an extra 1 second, an extra 2 seconds of tension, an extra 3 seconds of tension per rep on the muscles that are actively working. And that, even though it seems like a small amount of time, that small amount of time will accumulate over the course of your entire workout to get you to a point where your muscles are like, oh, wow, that is way more fatiguing than if you'd done the same movement a little bit quicker.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'm glad you hit up on that, actually, because time under tension is a fascinating concept that actually, I mean, it's been around ever since strength training was first developed, who knows, like thousands of years ago. But exercise trainers have discovered that it is a very, very, very powerful tool that you can use to your advantage without having to change anything. And rather than trying to put more weight onto a bar or lift a heavier kettlebell or lift a heavier dumbbell, you can actually maybe even decrease the weight. You don't have to change the weight. You just have to slow down the movement. And that right there is going to cause, active muscle groups to have to work just a little bit harder.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've done this before, like some heavier reps on some of your workouts, you're going heavier in weights. That's a harder stressor on your CNS, on your central nervous system.
Correct.
And that's a different type of tiredness than versus if you do 15 reps of a squat with time under tension. Like your legs, your hamstring, your glutes are going to be on fire. But if I put a lot heavier weight than you're used to and I get you to do 3 repetitions, you'll be like, that was really hard, but like my legs are not tired. But they're tired because your central nervous system is just fried, right?
Yes,
you just
overloaded.
can't do more, even though the legs are still good. And there's a different type of tiredness that goes into your day after when you train like that. You're working, you're just drew with your kids, your family, you're just drained after, right? Versus your muscles burning a little bit.
Absolutely. I love it. It's, I mean, there's so much strength training, we could do an entire episode about, different techniques that can actually like help you significantly improve your technique and your focus when you're in the gym. So maybe we'll do that on a separate conversation.
Cool.
But what we've covered so far is actually fantastic because there's so much valuable information. And I'll just kind of give a quick recap here. First thing we talked about was the secrets to sustainable body composition. Okay. It's not about trying to lose weight in a short period of time. In fact, it's not about trying to gain muscle in a short period of time. You have to set a reasonable time frame and try and make very small changes to your diet and very small changes to your exercise regimen so that you can make sustained progress over the course of time. I'm very glad that you brought that up because we've been saying this for a long time. That's what the studies demonstrate as well. And truth be told, when you want to make habit change possible and sustainable, then a little bit of change, like micro habits, make a massive difference over the course of a long period of time. Yeah. We also talked about why strength training is critical throughout life, at any stage of life, whether you're a teenager, whether you're an adult, whether you're middle-aged, whether you're elderly. Strength training is something that cannot be, what's the word I'm looking for? Cannot be stressed enough. It is absolutely critical for muscle development, for resisting against sarcopenia as you get older in life, also for helping strengthen connective tissue, and also for helping to build, to increase bone mineral density as you increase and get older in life, to prevent against sarcopenia and to prevent against osteopenia and osteoporosis as well.
Yeah.
We also talked about why making large changes like drastic calorie deficits, 400, 500, 600, 800 calories per day over the course of time is not a smart idea because it's not a sustainable approach. And when you do it that way, you may be able to make some changes in your body composition in a short period of time. You may be able to lose weight quickly, but guess what? A month into the future, 2 months into the future, you're going to be staring at yourself in the mirror being like, oh God, do I have to continue doing this? Because I freaking hate every minute of this. This is too hard. And this is not something that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Right. And the truth is that you can see real results happening everywhere you look at people who are following these strategies, right? You got ridiculous results in your body composition and in your training regimen. You went from 240 down to 160, from 160 back up to 200. And you're doing this all sort of over the course of time, long time periods. And now you're going from 200 back down to 190, but you're doing it very strategically. And you're doing it for a reason with small calorie deficits or small calorie increases.
I'm doing 6 months to lose 10 pounds. That's how slow I like to go on a personal level.
6 months to lose 10 pounds. I mean, we're talking about what, 1.5 pounds per month. That's nothing.
Yeah. Just so retain as much lean muscle mass as possible so we can just focus on decreasing the body fat. When you're in the rush, that's when thing goes wrong, right? I got 6 months. It's an enjoyable process every time I do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way it should be. That's actually really cool to hear. So give us more information here. If people want to, find out more about you, find out more about the coaching programs you offer, find you on social media, where can they find you?
Yeah, for sure. So 2 things. Do you mind if I add one little valuable piece for the audience?
Absolutely not.
No more value.
Please do not add value, whatever you do.
Have you ever heard of reverse dieting before?
Talk to me. No, I have not.
Okay, wow. So reverse dieting is like the secret sauce to keeping the weight off. That's cool. Our secret sauce to keep the weight off. It's not secret because I'm always public about it. So reverse dieting, the best way to put it is like when you go into a calorie deficit to shift your body composition, your metabolism slows down because it's adjusting to less food and more exercise, right? That's why we want to go slow and gradual ultimately. So if we're to put into an analogy, like having a flame, right? Your flame shrinks down as you go through your fat loss phase, which is normal. There's no other way kind of around it. It happens. So how do we make a small flame bigger? Right? Most people will go and throw a big log of wood on it, right? And the flame can't handle that. That's what most people do when they're done a fat loss phase. They just go back to eating normally. That's why for North America, 95% of people put the weight back on 6 months to a year after.
Absolutely.
Right?
No question.
That's why. So how do you make a small flame bigger efficiently? Right? It's not by throwing a big log of wood, which is equivalent to a lot of food. It's by throwing smaller pieces of wood on it over time. And eventually the fire grows where it can handle a log. It can handle a fire, a house. It can handle a whole forest. Right? So reverse dieting is where you slowly, methodically re-add calories on a weekly basis, depending on how people's body are responding. So what we're doing is just slowly adding more food where the body goes like, more food. Let me use it for energy. I don't need to store it because I need more right now because I'm in a deficit. So we do that with carbohydrates because carbohydrates are more easily digestible. So we go like, hey, Cyrus, here's an extra 50 calories of carbohydrate for this week, every day for this week. Your body goes like, an extra 50 calories of energy. Let me just use it right away and not store it. And so through reverse dieting, we're able to add 800 to 1,000 plus calories of food intake to people's food intake after they've done their fat loss phase. And 80% of people maintain the same weight after. 10% of people lose a bit of weight. That's pretty rare. Worst case scenario, people put on a pound or two for 1,000 calorie trade-off on the process. And it takes about like 4 months to do that, right? It's very not sexy, but that's the way where we speed up the metabolism of people after, and they're able to keep the weight off 2 to 3 years after they lost it. Right. So
Wow.
this is a public thing. It's online. Dr. Lane Norton documented the whole thing. There's research on it, but that's what we do with all of our members, because when we do that, the fat loss becomes worth it. If we don't do that, the fat loss is like, you have a high chance of the weight coming back on after. So a little added value.
One thing that I think I didn't fully capture on that was you said that you're actually trying to slowly add back calories over the course of time. And the total number of calories you're trying to add back is 1,000 calories per day. Is that right?
No, 1,000, 800 to 1,000 over the course of the 4 months. Per day, it depends on people's response, right? So per day, we can add 50 calories. So it's always for 1 week. So I'll go like, hey, Cyrus, this week, I want you to add an extra 50 calories of carbohydrates per day for 1 week. We watch how your body responds. So sometimes we can add 50 calories, sometimes 100, sometimes 200. Very much depends on how people's body is responding. But let's just say we add 100 per day, like 100 calories extra per day for 1 week. Then let's just say you're at 2,300, you'd be at 2,400 per day for 1 week. Then we see how your body responds, and we're able to kind of increase. So overall, we're able to add 800 to 1,000 calories total on their food intake to maintain the 30-pound fat loss.
Got it. So yeah, so basically the net difference between where you ended your weight loss and the end of the reverse diet is going to be a swing of about 800 to 1,000 calories. It's just going to take you 4 months to get to that point, and we're going to sort of like add back in calories very slowly over that course of that period of time.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. That's fascinating. Actually, I haven't actually done too much. I haven't heard about this in the past, but I want to do a lot more reading about it now that you tell me about it. This is fascinating.
Yeah, Dr. Lane Norton has a lot of research on it. So yeah, that's a little added piece of value. And ultimately, if people want more info, for me, it's just fitvegan.ca. Really simple. The podcast, everything's on there, which I'd love to have you on the show as well, by the way. But yeah, everything's on there. Fitvegan.ca.
Fitvegan.ca. There you go. Perfect. And what are people? So give us an idea. You are a exercise coach. You are a fitness coach. You are a diet coach. You are both. What do you do, and how can people actually benefit from your information?
Yeah, for sure. So for us, it's a whole life transformation. So on my side, my expertise is more on the psychological side as well. Obviously, I'm a trainer and I've done all of these things, but more on the psychological side, because I found that, like, again, kind of from doing some of Tony Robbins' work, which working with him closely, 80% of transformation is psychology, 20% is strategy. So you know this, you give a plan to someone, like, here are the guidelines. If they don't follow it, there's nothing that happens, right? So it's like, how do we get people to be compliant? That's mindset, that's storytelling, that's psychology. So we have a holistic nutritionist on the team. We have a doctor on the team that's taking care of everything for them, and then taking care of the psychology so they can actually be compliant to the plan and kind of deal with the insecurities, the self-sabotage, the limiting thoughts that come up, dealing with stressors from life. So it's a whole life program so that we can get you to, like, get a handle on this area of your life so that you don't have to worry about it after.
Amazing. And my next question was, well, how long does that transformation take? But the answer is, I'm not going to ask that question. It's a dumb question, because the answer is, it doesn't matter how much time it takes. And the answer is, it's probably going to take a minimum of 6 months or a minimum of a year, if I'm not mistaken.
It's custom. So like I said, it's about, on average, depending where people start, because some people come in and they're eating 800 calories a day. And like, we need to reverse diet you before we do a fat loss, because there's no wiggle room for you to do anything, right? You're over exercising and severely under eating. So it's about 20 pounds per 4 months. And then once they're done that, it's 4 months of reverse dieting. And then after that, they get a lifetime of, like, support after. So it's whatever fat loss they have plus a body recomposition. So it ended up being 8 months for most people. Some people do a year and a half because they want to lose more weight. Some people, after they're done, they want to do a marathon or whatever because they lost 50 pounds. And, like, I want to show to myself that I can do it. I'm like, now's a good time to do it because metabolism's optimized. You're in a good spot. Then we can train for it.
Perfect.
So yeah, it's custom the duration for each people.
Gotcha. But again, long-term is the key, right? We're not trying to make large drastic changes over a short period of time.
No, exactly. Yeah, this is a lifetime journey, right? Like, the expectations, you're going to exercise for the rest of your life. You're going to be aware of your nutrition for the rest of your life. I'm just a glimpse of your journey in the whole process. I just want to set people down the right path, right? Of eating whole food, plant-based, disease-proofing the body, living an active lifestyle, dealing with the things that are in their head that are preventing them from doing the thing that they need to do. And then just kind of get them going in that right direction.
Correct.
Right? If they go to, like, I'm not going to name some of the other fat loss programs that are out there, but like, 2,000 calorie deficit, 2 hours of cardio every day, and like blah, blah, blah. Then you have this unhealthy blueprint in your head of what fat loss looks like, right? So if you do gain weight and you think about losing weight, that first idea that comes to your head, that's your blueprint for fat loss. If it gives you anxiety, it's probably not the right one to have. So I'm just trying to build a healthy one for people.
How dare you build healthy habits for people? Sounds ridiculous.
I know, right?
Amazing. Maxime, this has been so fun. I feel like I could talk to you for hours about this, and we've covered a lot of ground here. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for taking so much time and attention to help other people out. And thank you for teaching people the true power of making small changes over a long period of time so that they can integrate this little thing called sustainability into their life. So much of what I see on the internet today is all about unsustainable, quick results, instant gratification, and it frustrates me. And you are a very, very inspirational voice that that really is teaching what we have known for a very long time as, you know, a group of scientists and as exercise physiologists and as nutritionists, that time matters. And if you elongate your timeline and you allow yourself to make changes over a 6-month, 12-month, 2-year, 5-year, 10-year period, that you can make some unbelievable transformations, but you just have to be patient. And I appreciate you really drilling this home, because it's so, 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 so important in this world. And I can tell you're doing a lot of positive things for people. So thank you.
I appreciate that, man. I honestly really love the work that you're doing. I've been following it for a very long time. So I actually have a gift for your audience that I had the intention of doing. So what I'd like to do for your audience is buy 10 of your books and give them away to the people that would be listening to the podcast. So
that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So we'd love to do that for your audience, because again, I really respect the work that you're doing. I really appreciate it. There needs to be more people like you and us that are putting this positive message in the world. So again, I'd like to buy 10 books. However we do it, people stay tuned for it. But yeah, we'd love to do that for your audience.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And do you think there's somebody in our audience that hasn't read our book? No, but I appreciate you supporting us and for saying those kind words, because honestly, we've been doing this now for 7 years. And, we see so many positive transformations over the course of time, and people are they're changing their diets, they're changing their lifestyles, they're changing their mindsets, and they get ridiculous results. Yeah. And, anything that you can do to help spread this word is always appreciated. So thank you very much, my man.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Have a great day. We'll talk soon.